Hello and welcome to Newsmax TV. I'm John Bachman. We're here in Tampa at the RNC, and I'm sitting here talking with Texas Congressman Louis Gohmert. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to be with you, John.
Pleasure talking with you, sir. I wanted to talk to you today. We got some new economic numbers. Unemployment continues to be ghastly. I guess that's a good word for it. There's no traction,
tragic.
no momentum from Obama's policies. What do you think the best way that the Romney campaign can talk about these numbers to create a clear contrast to how they will deal with unemployment?
Well, I think in the past, the Democrats have showed us the way. You go to people that are suffering because of this economy. You know, they want to talk about a war on women. There's nothing worse than creating an environment where businesses are shutting down, businesses being lost by those that are staying in operation. You have people being asked to take a cut in pay, people being told they're going to have to drop their health insurance and not provide that anymore. I mean, when I read Obamacare, it was very clear to me, well, if you can pay a $2,000 fine or pay for an insurance policy that may average $12,000, businesses are actually being pushed out of helping with health insurance. So you've got people that are finding themselves, asking, hey, I thought Obamacare was going to make sure we had health insurance, and now we're without. We're going to be without next year. Those things are a war on women. They're a war on people who are just trying to live, and this administration is being so destructive. So I think it's just getting with the folks, letting their personal stories get out there. Instead, they throw out all these distractions, like, you know, some of the mainstream media that's not as careful as Newsmax, and I really mean that. You know, we're putting out, oh, well, you know, that auto plant in Janesville, Wisconsin closed in December. No, it didn't. If they will really check the facts, they find there were people laid off in December from that plant that were producing SUVs. But you can find a newscast in April of 2009 saying, well, they were still producing cars, but as of this week, they're going to have to go ahead and cease production. It was April of 2009. They kept some other employees on. Talk to those employees that were let go in April of 2009. Those are ways you get the message out. And obviously, we're fighting a mainstream media that is so in the tank for this president. It's going to take work, and we're going to have to be serious about how we get the truth to Americans.
The House has passed dozens of jobs bills that have died in the Senate. Let's say Republicans take control of the Senate and Romney wins the White House. Which one of those jobs bills do you want to see then President Romney sign first?
Well, one of the very first jobs bill I want to see is the repeal of Obamacare, because that is truly killing jobs. And there's so many, I've heard from employers that say, I don't know, what am I going to have to do next year? And so that repeal will be the number one jobs bill I want to see repealed. And then number two, to stop the war on producing our own energy. You know, this president says he's for all of the above, but apparently what he means is all above ground. So if we stop the war on energy, West Virginia miners can go back to work. Texas miners can go back to work. We can start producing more of our own energy. We've got so much natural gas. They say with one hand, oh yeah, we're for all above. We want all our sources of energy. And they have departments like the EPA and even the Department of Justice, you know, suing over mallards that had oil on them after they had died. You know, oh gee, we're good. There's a war against domestic energy production. And you say, well, how do you know it's domestic? Because I read the president's so-called American Jobs Act. Mine was much better that I filed before his, because it would have ended the 35% tariff on all American-made goods, called the corporate tax. But in his American Jobs Act bill, if you read through that, first of all, you see it's not millionaires and billionaires he raises taxes on. It's anybody who makes over $125,000. And second, you see that he cuts out deductions, normal business deductions, not for the major companies like Exxon and all the OPEC nations. It cuts out all the most important business deductions for independent oil companies that drill 94-95% of all the oil and gas wells in America.
And what type of deduction specifically are you talking about?
We're talking about the intangible drilling costs, because there are these costs for drilling the well. No matter what business you're in, you get to deduct the cost of creating profit. And there is no subsidy for these companies. They're just getting to deduct their costs of doing business. There also is the elimination for deductions for those who invest in oil and gas wells, because those of us in Texas know, people will come around and look, we're going to drill these wells, here's our package. You pay so much, you'll get 5%. If it's a dry hole, sorry. If it hits, then you'll have to pay 5% of the cost, but then you'll also get 5% of the profit. Well, that's how independents operate. If you're Exxon, you just go drill it. You don't have to go get investments.
Right.
But 94 or 5% of all the wells drilled are done, like I said, where you have to get people to invest. He eliminates the deduction for those who invest. Those investments can't be deducted. And so they'll find it extremely hard to get capital to go drill these wells. So he says one thing, and yet he says, I'm going after the majors. There's not one thing in those 5 pages of tax law that he changes that will affect Exxon, the big guys. It's a war on American independent energy production. So you can't look at and listen to what President Obama says. You have to look at what he actually does.
Some Republicans favor eliminating all, if not most, of these deductions in favor of a lower tax rate across the board.
Yeah.
Would that work as well?
I think we're talking about personal income tax. And I've talked to Art Laffer, and I hope at some point he'll roll it out, but he said he and his son had worked out a potential 12-12 plan where 12% income tax for persons and some type of corporate type tax. But when we hear that we want everybody to pay their fair share, boy, they're singing my tune then. What better way for a lower flat tax? Steve Forbes has talked about it for years. And I like the idea of continuing to deduct for charitable deductions, because charities do a better job if they're legitimate charities for helping the poor and the downtrodden than the government does. But then also for home mortgage interest deduction.
So you favor keeping home mortgage, charitable deductions,
those two.
That's it. No child tax credit.
Well, now, the way you handle that is, if you're going to have a family of 6, then that's more people that allows you to have more income. The flat tax will be on. So you say, well, it's a tax credit, but we have got to end a situation where we are paying billions of dollars to people, number one, that are here illegally, and number two, their children aren't even here in the country, but they're claiming an income tax credit for children. Maybe they have, maybe they don't live here. We've seen reports on those things. It's time to end that kind of stuff.
On immigration, has Mitt Romney done a good enough job of articulating his message on how he would reform immigration in the United States?
I think all of us as Republicans have not adequately explained, even though a lot of us have talked a lot about it, because Americans don't understand yet. People say, I hear farmers say, look, we've got to have immigrant workers come in and harvest our crops, or you won't get fruit and vegetables like you want. Well, okay. First of all, we've got to secure the border so we know who's coming in, but we want immigrants. We want immigration legally. We need immigration legally. But the way you do that is, okay, farmers, we're not going to keep subsidizing you by paying the health care for these immigrants coming in. You're going to need an umbrella health insurance policy that covers all of the people you bring in here to do this work. Fine. Let's give them a visa that for so many days to come in. But then they've got to cover them with health insurance. And so, and the thing, some people say, well, you Republicans are anti-Hispanic. The truth is, when you get down to the way so many of us feel, and I know this may be a gross generalization, but it's what I've seen in the Hispanic community. in general, they have a faith in God, a devotion to family, and a hard work ethic. That's what made America great. I have great hope that the Hispanic community can lift us back to those three things that made us the greatest nation in the world.
Let's wrap.
I have great hope for that, and we obviously need to communicate that better, how much they mean to us, but we need to make sure it's legal.
Let's wrap up with some other disturbing news we got today about Iran. They've reportedly doubled their centrifuge capabilities since May. Obviously, this speaks to President Obama's policy on Israel. Tell me your concerns, and what do you think, since he's still going to be in office at least until November, what President Obama needs to do today to check Iran's increase in nuclear capability?
Well, it's actually parallel to what he's done in Afghanistan. He apologized to the Afghans so they kill more of our soldiers. In Iran, he tries to reach out. So, we'll do sanctions. How in the world do you do sanctions when Russia and China aren't participating? There is no such thing as sanctions when China and Russia are doing full business, and we're giving exceptions on certain. That's ridiculous. I was talking to one of the top leaders from Israel. It wasn't Netanyahu, but one of their other leaders, and they said, "You want the Iranians to stop spinning centrifuges? The U.S. has to have a credible threat to attack." As he said, Israel has a credible threat because people believe Israel will actually attack, and they will.
So you believe President Obama needs to lay out a credible threat to attack for Iran?
And it can't be a bluff. The only way we'll have a credible threat is if we really mean to attack, and we should. And actually, when we get serious enough that we're getting ready, we're going in to take out everything they've got. And we may have to hit them with bunker busters more than once in order to take out certain facilities. But we need to do whatever it takes.
Does that include putting more ships in the Persian Gulf?
I'm not sure we even have to do that without getting into methods and practices. But whatever it takes. And once we have a credible threat to attack, I don't think we'll have to, but we've got to be ready to go. And we shouldn't have waited this long. It would have been a lot easier if we'd done it sooner. But this is a threat to civilization as we know it. And of course, there are so many different ways things. Some people say, well, their rockets aren't that accurate. Well, do you need a rocket to float a boat up the Hudson or the Potomac or the Houston Ship Channel with a nuke on it? Does it take any more than one rocket that just generally gets in the area where electromagnetic pulse would do massive damage across our nation to burning out computer chips? There's all kinds of things. We cannot let these terrorists have weapons, nuclear weapons. And one other thing, during the Carter administration, President Carter pushed the idea that, we should never take out the government, the leaders of a government that are at war with us, that was inhumane. John, how much more inhumane is it to go to war with people that like you and kill thousands and thousands of people that actually, before you attacked them, liked you, instead of I think it's time for this debate. If there are leaders at the top of a government that are at war with us and have said repeatedly they want to take us out like Ahmadinejad and Khomeini, would we be better off to say, look, Iran, Afghanistan, Pakistan, whoever, you're entitled to whatever government you want, but when they kill Americans, they attack Americans, then we're going to take out your government. We're not going to nation build. We can't afford it anymore. And you can put in whatever government you want. But again, any government you put in place that comes to war with us, that attacks us, says they're going to take us out, and takes action to do that, take out the government and let the people put one in that's more peaceable for them and for us.
I know there are a lot of folks who are waiting to hear how President Obama responds. We'll have to see how that goes in terms of this new information on Iran. I want to thank you so much.
But John, you've been covering this. This is no shock. We've known they were still building centrifuges. They're still spinning centrifuges. They've been moving this way. This is really not a shock for most of us.
I'll see what happens from here on out. Congressman Louis Gohmert, thanks so much for talking to us.
Thank you very much, John.
And thanks for watching Newsmax TV.